Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is the second day of the Prespa Forum Dialogue. We are still here in Ohrid, and today our guest for this interview is Professor Edward Џозеф. Professor, thank you very much for taking the time for this interview.
Nice to be with you.
Professor, you've been through different institutions assigned on the Balkans, on the Western Balkans region.
Yes.
You are a crisis management expert. Basically, you've been everywhere, you've seen everything. Do you think that the worst is behind us for this region?
Let me say this, no one has been everywhere and seen everything. What I did have, I had the privilege, I consider it a privilege, to have been with the people of this region in every permutation of their conflict, from Croatia to Kosovo, and in Bosnia-Herzegovina in all elements of that conflict of Serbs, Bosniaks, Croats, Bosniaks, even Bosniaks on Bosniaks in Bihać, Kanin, North Macedonia, then Republic of Macedonia in 2000, 2001.
You were reporting for the International Crisis Group back then for Macedonia,
that's
right?
Exactly. I was here then with the International Crisis Group and then in Kosovo, and I was there in Mitrovica first with UNMIK, and then I was under Obama nominated to be the deputy head of the OSCE mission in Kosovo. So I've seen a lot. Look, is the worst behind? Yes, of course, because the worst violence came at the breakup of Yugoslavia, which was a very particular moment, and had, with part of it was the control of the weapons of the JNA by Serbia. So, which influenced the type of wars that could be fought. So I don't believe that those type of wars would be fought, those of massive violence and massive ethnic cleansing. But could there be instability and violence? It's possible. Let's hope not, but it certainly could be possible. We've seen indications of that. But I would say this, for geopolitical interests, U.S. interests here, Vladimir Putin does not need a war in the Balkans in order to win. Vladimir Putin can win in other ways without a war in this region. So there's still very strong geopolitical interest of the United States in the Balkans, even if there's no war.
As always, we're going to come to that influence of the U.S. in the Balkans and the interest of integrating Western Balkans in the European Union. So let's, you mentioned Vladimir Putin, so all of a sudden now we have a war on a different side of Europe, the Russian aggression on Ukraine.
Yes.
How did this change the world, and especially how did this change the Europe and European Union?
Well, I will tell you. Let me quickly say for Balkans, and I'll come to European Union. The war changed Europe, but the war did not change Balkans. So this is the big problem. This is the big problem. We see a systematic change in attitudes in Europe. Of course, we all know Europe is big. EU and NATO, these are big organizations, and we know that there's various opinions. You have Hungary to UK and US in NATO. You have Hungary and staunch allies like Germany, and you have Denmark, for example, strong EU members, and you have Hungary as a very weak pro-Russian member. But even Hungary has gone along with 6 rounds of sanctions on Russia. We should remember that at a time when Serbia has done none, 0 sanctions. Even Viktor Orban has gone along with 6 rounds of sanctions, even though he does other things that are not in accordance with. Hungary did not block those sanctions,
Exactly.
and Serbia has done nothing on sanctions and going opposite direction with Putin in doing gas deals.
Will someone ask Serbia to finally choose a side, choose a path forward?
You know,
I mean, you cannot play on both sides, I believe.
This is the problem. I unfortunately think the answer to that, I'm going to be very clear with you. You know what? I think the answer to that is unfortunately no. Because we are here in beautiful Lake Ohrid in June. It's already becoming late June, and this war started in February. So at first there were all these calls on Serbia, don't sit on two chairs and make your decision, and the sanctions. And we see from increasing confidence and defiance by Alexander Vučić. He sent his favorite spokesperson, Alexander Vulin, to make personal attack on the U.S. ambassador, who is very well known, Christopher Hill. To make a personal attack on him, making allegations about him and his perspective, and even making a threat against the United States, Vulin did, if Serbia is, in his words, forced to choose. And Hill never even mentioned use of any kind of, quote, force. So I don't think it's good, and I think I know the reason why. There will be no pressure on Serbia.
Why is that?
It's very simple. It's because of Kosovo. It's because there are European divisions on Kosovo. And that's the source of the leverage that Alexander Vučić has.
Yeah, currently there are 5 European countries that did not recognize Kosovo.
Yes, but it's exactly. And this is what this means.
So you think he's using that? He's
totally
saying
using
if
that.
EU is pressuring him, he's going to say, well, still we have member countries that did not recognize Kosovo.
He's invulnerable to pressure because of this. And I explain it to your viewers. It's very simple why. Effectively, Serbia is not an EU candidate because of these non-recognizers. Serbia is an EU member. Serbia has the power of a Hungary or another member, or Bulgaria is a better example. Serbia has the power of Bulgaria that Bulgaria has. Well, how? How is that possible? Because 5 EU countries say, we won't recognize Kosovo until Serbia recognizes. That means they give their proxy to Serbia,
exactly.
And it means Serbia doesn't have to do anything. Just like Bulgaria doesn't have to do anything. So you have Bulgaria and Serbia are in the same position. They just have the status quo. They don't have to do anything. They just have to resist. In Serbia's case, all Serbia has to do is pretend, show up for meetings of the dialogue, make nice notions of being interested in EU candidacy. North Macedonia is desperate to have its EU candidacy. Serbia has had that privilege. It's a privilege to have EU candidacy for a decade, almost a decade, and has done almost nothing.
Nothing. It's not, yes. Only 2 chapters open, I believe. And
so we have a saying in US, we say action speaks louder than words. We know the actions. Alexander Vučić is not interested in joining the European Union because that means accepting reforms and values that would threaten his rule. He likes the benefits of being a candidate. You get financial benefits from that. It's politically important there to say that they have a candidacy, but he has no serious interest, and he has no interest or reason to settle the Kosovo issue because he has the leverage. And we see in Serbia's actions and words its attitude on Kosovo. If they were serious about dialogue, they would do like North Macedonia and Greece. They would sit like mutual respect and respect each other and discuss. What do you see from Serbia? Continued hostility. Their number one priority, what they spend their number one foreign policy priority is to go around the world and convince countries not to recognize Kosovo. That's not the actions of a country that says, okay, we had a war, we want to build an economic zone, and we want to cooperate. Those are not the actions that you do if you want to have a peace with your neighbors, the way North Macedonia has done and the way other neighbors have done.
In that direction, Councillor Scholz, he visited recently the Western Balkans, and he also visited Serbia.
Yes.
And he gave a clear message.
Yes.
He said openly that without recognition, there is no membership in the EU.
Yes.
But from this point of view, what does it mean? It means nothing. I mean, they can just continue with the same thing.
You said it exactly right. It was good that Chancellor Scholz said that. It's good. Berlin, you see, has changed its perspectives a lot on the region, also because of Putin, because of what Putin has done. It has a dramatically different view of Russia, and that and Germany understands that there's only one set of values you can have. You cannot have two set of values. You cannot have a little bit of Putin values and a little bit of EU values. No, no. And he's absolutely right on recognition. And I can even explain legal reasons and practical reasons. You can have only one order in Europe. You cannot have a half order. And partition of Kosovo would be disaster for North Macedonia. This would be vindicating Putin approach of this. Same, you want partition of Kosovo. This is like partition of Ukraine. This is same thing. Serbia, look, Kosovo, they compare to Ukraine and Donbass. Nonsense. It makes no sense. Kosovo was a republic. Not a republic, was a province, had autonomy.
Autonomy, yes.
And Milosevic unilaterally took away the autonomy. But it had almost all the powers of a republic.
Yes,
and
correct.
so it had almost all the powers. It was completely removed unilaterally by Belgrade. 10 years of repression. At the time, Kosovo was led by a pacifist, Ibrahim Rugova, who was not some fighter, a killer type guy. Yes, there was KLA that came later, and KLA, you see a position of U.S. compared to Russia. U.S. has had a fair position towards Serbs and protection of Serbs. Albanians who committed war crimes against Serbs had to answer for them. Who was the only president of any country in the region to have to step down as president and go to The Hague? Only Hashim Thaçi. Only Hashim Thaçi, and who did that? U.S. and EU together created that court, and U.S. pressure said, we treat all the people of this region, there can be only one order for this region. Everyone has to answer for war crimes, and Albanians have to answer for war crimes, and Hashim Thaçi has to answer. He's sitting in The Hague right now. So this is nonsense from Serbia to keep positioning and pushing this and making this some issue, our sovereignty and our territorial integrity. Belgrade has to answer, and that answer is to respect its neighbors and respect the reality of Kosovo as an independent state and as a good neighbor. And Kosovo has its obligations to Kosovo Serbs, and that's the subject of the dialogue. That is the proper subject of the dialogue, is to Belgrade and Pristina to discuss one main issue, which is the status of Kosovo Serbs in a functional sovereign Kosovo, to make sure Kosovo Serbs have all rights and can live and thrive and participate in the economy of Kosovo as an independent state.
Well, it's interesting also when President Vučić on the Open Balkan Forum, he said that, I quote, "I'm not ashamed of our traditional historical good relations with Russia." And that's also, I believe, all the polls are saying that is in general what the Serb population thinks for Russia, like a big brother,
Yes.
always helping them, which is probably of myth. It's a myth, historical myth. Some of the analysis will say. And now it's interesting how Russia is actually using Kosovo as
Yes.
an excuse
Yes. This
for
is
Donbass, for Lugansk, for...
exactly, and I'll tell you, and you see, this is the interesting point, and you're absolutely right, because Putin uses Kosovo in two ways. He uses it in two ways. He uses it for him. he says, you did that in Kosovo, NATO, you did that, I can do that in Ukraine, which is absolutely ridiculous. Serbia under Milosevic was given every chance to comply. This was a decision of a NATO alliance of big countries and small countries, of countries like Greece and Romania were participated in that air campaign, who had every right to stop it. Even one country could have stopped that. A NATO alliance is democratic. It operates on consensus. All of them went along with it. Every single one. Every single NATO country went along with NATO bombing. And it's complete nonsense. Putin at the same time says, oh, I protect Serbian sovereignty. And he tries to have both ways. Oh, I protect sovereignty of Serbia, and oh, I can use Kosovo decision in Ukraine. He says I can do two things at the same time. He can do this because of the non-recognizers. That's the only way he can do this. He does this because there's a split decision within NATO and the EU. Once all NATO country, actually only the NATO, we don't even need Cyprus. Once they all recognize, he only has the one argument. He can only try to apply that to Ukraine, which is obviously completely different. No one would be convinced. And he will have a split with Belgrade. He will have a split because then he can only be pushing that, and he has no claim anymore to be defending Serbian sovereignty, which, as you saw what happened in Belgrade already. They attacked Putin when he used this. So our aim, the whole Balkans changes when there is in NATO just the four countries, Greece, Spain, Slovakia, and Romania. If they recognize it's finished, the whole Serbia part of the story, that means the Kosovo manipulation is stopped, Montenegro manipulation is stopped from Belgrade, the manipulation of Bosnia-Herzegovina, this scheme with Dodik, where Vučić pretends to restrain Dodik, all of those games are finished. The Croatia game has already been finished. Do you know why? The only reason why is there not the same game in Croatia? Because Vučić does not control Pupovac and Serbs in Croatia.
Exactly.
So it's obvious. These are not complicated things. You don't have to be some big Balkan expert. He controls Serbs in Kosovo. He controls Serbs in Montenegro. He controls Serbs in Bosnia-Herzegovina. He and Dodik have a scheme, an operation. And you look at Croatia, he doesn't control them. And what do Serbs do? They participate in the government. They've been deputy prime ministers. Sometimes they've been the key factor in forming the government in Croatia. So it's a completely different operation, and we still have that mess in those countries because of him.
So let's go,
please,
for a second. Let's go back to the European Union itself. We can say for North Macedonia and Albania, especially for North Macedonia, they've failed to deliver. Because as we know, the agreement was you resolve the dispute with Greece, change the name, and then you enter in NATO automatically and start negotiations with the EU.
Yes.
So now EU failed to deliver, Albania is attached to us, so we have two victims.
Yes.
But also, do you think that the damage is even bigger because what sign are we sending to other countries of the Western Balkans, and what are we saying to Ukraine? Which yesterday on the summit, Mr. Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, he said that on the EU summit on the 23rd, I'm expecting to be given with the status of a candidate country. So my question for the European Union, I'm just going to throw this so you can answer the question. Last year, on last year's Prespa Forum, I've heard your argument with one of the EU ambassadors, saying that
it was betrayal.
Basically, betrayal, yes, and also you were talking about the bureaucracy that the EU has. You know, they have the same methods. For example, you compare that with the executive order of Mr. Biden. You
Yes.
said, this is how you act on something.
Yes.
And you are doing nothing.
Yes, yes, I'm going to come to that exactly. We're going to come to this betrayal of North Macedonia in 1 second. I forgot to mention, because you mentioned Schultz's visit to Belgrade and mutual recognition. Just to mention that right here today at Prespa Forum Dialogue in Ohrid, Prime Minister Brnabić cited what Schultz had said in Belgrade and rejected it. So I just want to make that right here at this very forum, an hour or so ago, you had again this defiance by Belgrade of Germany, most strongest country in the EU. North Macedonia and Bulgaria, absolutely. What I said last year still holds true, and it is even more true because it's number one, a betrayal of North Macedonia completely, because North Macedonia has done everything that you can ask a country to do, and I want to emphasize this for your viewers. The Prespa agreement was a true compromise. Greece made concessions. Greece made concessions, and you know what is the proof? The proof of the concessions that Greece made, that North Macedonia won, I'm going to use that word, won, concessions from Greece, that Greece acknowledged Macedonian as a language and Macedonian as the nation. They didn't say, oh, we keep the right to Macedonian because of Macedonia. No, they gave that up. They conceded that. That is a big concession from Greece. This was Prespa agreement was, I know it was painful. It was a good agreement. It is a good agreement. It was a true compromise. And here's the proof. The proof is Prespa agreement scared Bulgaria. Because of that, Bulgaria saw that Greece was acknowledging Macedonian identity, so I'm telling you that is the proof that a Prespa agreement was good. And this is when Bulgaria started with these games, and obviously Borisov had internal political reasons to do these games, and completely departing from friendship agreement, which is the opposite way of dealing with these things, which is to let experts discuss these historical questions and keep them out of politics. And they went in complete different direction. But what's new from last year? We talked about this last year, but what's new this year? There's something new. It's called Russian invasion of Ukraine. And what do we see in Bulgaria today? We see in Bulgaria today, this is what's new from last year, pro-Russian forces led by the president, Radev, previously done by pro-Russian Prime Minister Borisov, and now still collaborating with Borisov, we see by votes in parliament.
In the parliament, yes.
With pro-Russian, pro-Kremlin groups are now using Macedonian issue in Bulgaria to potentially bring down the government that is pro-West and that supports Ukraine, that even has done in many ways important support for Ukraine, and Petkov, who wanted to resolve this issue and allow his own country to be free of these type of constraints. So that's
the Russian influence. Evidently, is I mean, it's evident in Bulgaria. So the analysts and even the Prime Minister Petkov said it himself.
That's right. You have this
and
strong Russian influence, and you have Serbia and Bulgaria. They're rivals, but they each benefit from the relationship, and the relationship with Russia, with one, supports the other.
And what is interesting, you are part of the EU. You are a member state. You're not a candidate country.
That's right.
And European Union is doing nothing about it. I mean, they cannot control it. They cannot influence it. They cannot make some kind of a pressure or even decision. You know, all this decision-making process with consensus. Yes. I'm talking in the name of the citizens now.
Yes.
When
yes.
they're so disappointed in this,
yes.
and they say that no, this is just an excuse
Yes.
because the institution like that,
Yes,
with the countries in it like that,
that's right. And
they cannot solve this. I mean, they cannot make it happen.
that's right. But you see, the citizens have a right to be disappointed. They should be disappointed. I'm disappointed. Everyone who has a vision for this beautiful region to overcome these obstacles that are unnecessary. These are wonderful people throughout this region. All of these nationalities and histories, this is what makes this region, adds to the richness of this region. Different languages, different religions, different cultures, different experiences. As an outsider, it's interesting for us to come here in Balkans, to travel here. Look at this beautiful lake at the other end. There's a country, Albania, or even here, villages here where people are speaking completely different languages. Even in Albanian, you have division here, the Gagantosk.
Exactly. Yes.
Even right here, there's the villages, the dividing line.
Yes.
It's a fascination. It's contributing to the wealth of this region. It's beautiful, all of this in people. And we have these obstacles because of the inability of leaders in this region to really commit to democratic values and to resolve these questions. Bulgaria, it's different from Serbia. It's different. In Serbia, you have an entire regime that is dominating politics, dominating the media. You said they're pro-Russian. Why shouldn't they be? What are they fed every day on in the media? The government is controlling or influencing 95% of the media that they consume. 95% by a regime that is aligned with Putin but pretending to be interested in EU. Okay, a manipulator named Alexander Vučić, but that's not Bulgaria.
And it's interesting how that propaganda is going south from Serbia is coming to North Macedonia.
Absolutely, it is. He's hosting only European country that hasn't put sanctions on. That means he's hosting Russia Today, hosting Sputnik. This is poison. So this is poison coming into a region from a war criminal in Moscow named Vladimir Putin, who's a maniac, megalomaniac, crazed guy who doesn't care about his own people and wages a war for some kind of personal gain and maybe some related interests, and out of total fiction, creating fictions to support this brutal invasion. Not even caring about, and I want to say this to your viewers, and I want to look at the camera and say this, even some who think, oh, well, both sides are bad, or Russians are not so bad. I want to tell you something. Here's the difference between Western values and Putin values. Putin does not even care about his own Russian soldiers. That is not Western values. No member of NATO would do like Russia does and leave its own soldiers on the battlefield. I served in the American Army. I can tell you that's a violation of our Western values and respect for our own dead, of our own soldiers. Russia, they don't care. They're sending untrained troops. So even if you, NATO is bad and Russia, he had reasons, and you have some sympathy, you have to understand, Vladimir Putin does not even care about his own soldiers. Sending conscripts in there, and completely incompetent. Who would respect this guy? Why should Serbia and Serbs respect this guy and, we like Russia? He's so incompetent. Why would anybody respect this guy? He has some of the largest oil reserves in the country. They can't even get fuel to their own soldiers in the neighboring country. You want to align with this guy? Doesn't care about his own soldiers, can't even get fuel to his own soldiers, maniac. What?
So, with this all being said, I mean, it's well known.
I want to say that because I know people here who say, they think so bad, but I want to remind them of this, that everyone is choosing, including citizens. You at home, you are choosing. We are all choosing now. And if you say, oh, both sides are bad, this and that. You are making a choice.
You're making a decision.
And,
Exactly.
and you're making a choice to say, well, I think a guy named Putin who leaves his own Russian soldiers on the battlefield, who lies to the parents of the dead soldiers, lies to them. Is that your values? Is that what you would want for your children? That you would want a leader who would lie about them? When ship Moskva went down, to lie and say no soldiers, no sailors were killed? This is your values? These are not, there's a difference. It's not all the same. That's Russian disinformation. Though, of course, US, EU makes some mistakes. There's no doubt about it. But again, we've been principled. The US has been principled in the West. Albanians are held accountable for war crimes. Bosniaks are held accountable for war crimes. Croats are held accountable for war crimes. Everyone is held accountable. Serbs, if Serbs are victims, we look after and chase the perpetrators of the violence against Serbs. We do not only hold Serbs accountable, but Serbia is playing double game under Vučić, and it's manipulation. Bulgaria is doing another manipulation on North Macedonia.
Before we jump into a different subject, different topic, one last question about the European Union. There was a debate called Future of Europe, ended in May this year, so the war was on, the aggression was on. What after the war in Ukraine, what do you think is the outcome of that debate? Did Europe will change something substantially in the way it's functioning?
Yes, I think so. Look, we cannot be sure about the outcome of a war because it's a war that's ongoing. It's a very dangerous war. And Vladimir Putin is a very dangerous man. And he has nuclear weapons. And he's very reckless. Viewers need to understand, Putin is not so bad. Do you know what Russian soldiers did on nuclear power plants in Ukraine, which was home of Chernobyl, even risking nuclear catastrophe in Chernobyl? This is according to the International Atomic Energy Agency. These are independent UN experts who are accusing Russia of being reckless. All of North Macedonia would be affected if there's another explosion. All of Europe would be affected. This is Vladimir Putin, this recklessness. Europe has recognized that. Germany has recognized that. Germany had its own delusion about Putin under Merkel and under Schroeder. Schroeder was representing, even still does today.
Gazprom.
Rosneft and then Gazprom. And he says, I have no apologies. This is what he says. His friend is Vladimir Putin, a man with no honor is his friend. A man who would care nothing about Russians, not just Ukrainians. I can't emphasize this enough. It's not just that Vladimir Putin doesn't care about Ukrainians. He doesn't care about Russians. And Schroeder and Merkel thought, oh, we can do business. And this, for me, is a similar illusion, although Vučić has not committed these war crimes, but it's a similar illusion. The character of the country and of the leader of the country counts. Alexander Vučić is not oriented towards the West. He's oriented towards his own power and retaining power like Orban has power and like Putin has power. And that will not change. And indifference is in this in Bulgaria. Bulgaria is EU and NATO member. So yes, you have Radev but Radev is not Vučić. Radev does not control everything in Bulgaria. Petkov has his own support among Bulgarians. Petkov represents Bulgaria at its best. Petkov represents that says we were once in Warsaw Pact as number one ally of Moscow in Warsaw Pact, but we are now in the West. That is what Petkov represents. You don't have that in Serbia.
Yeah, he's determined on this way.
He's determined on this way, but he's being undermined.
Obviously, yes.
Kremlin is involved. Heavy corruption is involved. These are schemes, and you are right, absolutely right. It's up to EU and US EU and US, it's not just EU, and US has responsibility to ensure that Bulgaria makes the right decision, that these
U.S. already showed their commitment, and I
Yes.
believe now it's again the ball is on a European side.
That's right.
But and this is my last
Yes.
question, Mr. Џозеф.
Yes.
With when Mr. Bush was in power, Macedonia signed a strategic agreement with. A sort of partnership with United States of America, and now recently the foreign minister, Mr. Bujar Osmani,
Yes.
in the States he met Mr. Blinken, and
Yes.
we signed the strategic agreement, which
Yes.
is we are now the only country in the region that signed this kind of agreement. What does it mean for our country? What is the essence of this agreement?
It's very important. It's very important. This is, and you were right, that the Biden administration has been very supportive of North Macedonia on this question with Bulgaria. The Biden administration does not say, oh, why don't you just give the Bulgarians what they want. The United States does not say that. The United States understands and respects North Macedonia and the Macedonian identity, and does not say, oh, just give them what they want. This strategic dialogue that it was just opened is very important. This is both in symbolic and practical terms. This is commitment, a further commitment of the United States to its relationship with North Macedonia, which is a NATO ally, and which is very important, particularly these days, with such a threat from Russia, to have that, and to have this type of practical attention from the United States on concrete areas of cooperation that build the relationship between North Macedonia. You have to remember, U.S. is far. The U.S. is not just far. It takes me, I have to fly overnight to come and to your beautiful country. So this is very important. It gives at very high levels. Look, not every foreign minister can just walk into the office of Secretary of State Blinken. So Bujar Osmani
Yes.
was able to come in. That is expression of American and Biden administration respect for your country.
Sir, thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you.